world feels pretty overwhelming sometimes, doesn't it? The noise of the news, the demands of everyday life, and the weight of our own struggles. It's easy to feel disconnected from ourselves, from others, and even from God. But what if there's a way to live differently? What if, instead of being swept away by the chaos, we could live with intention, grounded in kindness? I've spent over 30 years in full-time Christian ministry, serving communities all around the world. And a key lesson I've learned and want to explore with you today is the power of kindness. And crucially, what you need to do to cultivate kindness in yourself. Kindness is not just about being nice, it's about living with a type of strength and grace that only God can provide. Living a kind life starts with 5 simple but profound foundations that we find in Psalm 141. And if you put these 5 principles into action, I guarantee that you will become a kinder, more impactful person. So let's start here. Verse 1. I call to you, Lord. Come quickly to me. Hear me when I call to you. May my prayer be set before you like incense. May the lifting up of my hands be like the evening sacrifice. These words set the tone. Psalm 141 teaches us that kindness starts with a deep connection to God. David begins this psalm with such urgency. Do you feel the raw power in his words? David isn't holding back. He's calling out to God, not with a rehearsed, perfect prayer, but with authenticity. There's a good lesson for us right there. Prayer doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be honest. If we want to live out the sort of kindness that transforms lives, it has to start with our relationship with God and our prayer life. As we do that, the 5 foundations for a kind life fall into place. So what are these 5 foundations? Well, let's start with the first foundation, which is guarding our spirituality. When David talks about his prayer being like incense and his hands being like a sacrifice, he's showing us something really powerful. Prayer isn't just a ritual, it's an offering. It's how we bring our hearts to God. And when we start with prayer, we're reminded that kindness flows from Him, not from our own strength. I'll be honest with you, there have been days when I've been too drained to be kind to others or even to myself. But those are the days I've learnt to stop and pray. And sometimes it's just a whispered, "Help me, Lord." And you know what? He always meets me there. Recently, I was rushing down my high street and a homeless person asked me for help. And my first thought, I don't have time for this. But I paused, prayed for a moment of patience, and God gave me what I needed to stop and show kindness. Now that moment stuck with me because it wasn't about me. It was about staying connected to the one who is the source of all kindness. But guarding your spirituality happens in another way too. Listen to verse 5. Let a righteous man strike me. That is a kindness. Let him rebuke me. That is oil on my head. David is saying something so countercultural here. He's talking about humility, being open to correction even when it's uncomfortable. Imagine viewing correction from a trusted friend or mentor as kindness. That takes a lot of spiritual maturity. But it's true. When we humble ourselves before God and allow others to lovingly point out where we can grow, we're guarding our hearts from pride. And pride is often the biggest barrier to kindness. So how do we guard our spirituality in everyday life? Well, here's a few ideas. First, start your day with prayer, even if it's just a simple "God guide me today." Secondly, create moments of stillness, whether it's lighting a candle, journaling, or taking a walk to reflect on God's goodness. Thirdly, be open to wise correction. Surround yourself with people who can lovingly challenge you to grow. And here's something to think about. When was the last time you prayed like David, honestly and urgently? And how can you invite God into the parts of your life where you feel drained or unkind? Okay, let's move on to the next foundation, which is guarding your speech. David says in Psalm 141 verse 3, "Set a guard over my mouth, Lord. Keep watch over the door of my lips." It's such a simple prayer, but it holds profound wisdom. Words have incredible power. Think about it. A single sentence can heal a heart or break one. Proverbs 18 verse 21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death." And that's not an exaggeration. Our words can shape the atmosphere of a conversation, a relationship, even someone's entire day. Can I tell you one of the things I'm most ashamed of in my life? I was at high school, probably 14 or 15 years old, so long ago, but I've never forgotten it. There was a boy in our class, a really odd guy who had no friends, and we used to pick on him mercilessly. And one day we were being really nasty to him, really horrible bullying, really. And I'll never forget it. He started to cry, and then he wet himself. And I remember feeling so ashamed of myself. And I've never lost that sense of shame for what we did to him that day. And I've never forgotten since then the power of words, for good and for bad. Oh man. Words matter. If you want to be kind, words really matter. David's prayer, "Set a guard over my mouth," is a plea for self-control. Here's what I love about this verse. David recognizes that he can't do this alone. He asks God to help him guard his lips. Now, this isn't about perfection. It's about surrender. It's saying, "God, I need your wisdom and restraint in what I say." That's the kind of intentionality we need when it comes to our speech and practicing kindness. So how do we guard our speech in everyday life? Well, here's some things that have helped me. Firstly, pause before speaking. When you feel a strong emotion, whether it's anger or frustration or even excitement, pause for just a few seconds. Ask yourself, is what I'm about to say kind, true and necessary? Secondly, pray for wisdom. Start your day by asking God to guide your words. Even a simple prayer like David's, "Lord, guard my mouth," can make a huge difference. Thirdly, practice gratitude and encouragement. Make it a habit to speak life into others. Compliment a co-worker. Thank your spouse. Encourage your kids. These small, intentional words can build a culture of kindness around you. Here's a challenge for you. Think of one person you can encourage today. Maybe it's someone you know who's struggling, or maybe someone at work. Find someone and speak a kind word to them. Which brings us on to the third foundation for kindness. The third foundation for living a kind life is guarding your social circle and friendships. Now, this one's deeply personal, isn't it? Friendships shape us more than we realise, sometimes in ways we don't notice until much later. David speaks to this in Psalm 141 verse 4. "Do not let my heart be drawn to what is evil, so that I take part in wicked deeds along with those who are evildoers. Do not let me eat their delicacies." David is asking God to protect his heart from being influenced by those who live unkindly or selfishly. And the phrase, "do not let me eat their delicacies," is so vivid. It's a reminder that not everything that looks good is good for us. And that applies to friendships too. Some friendships might feel exciting or convenient, but they can lead us away from kindness, joy, and ultimately God. I'll be real with you, there have been times in my life when I found myself in a circle of friends who didn't bring out the best in me. Now, they weren't bad people, but our conversations often veered into gossip or negativity, and slowly I noticed how it affected me. It took me a while, but I began to step back and pray for new friendships that would build me up instead of tear me or others down. And God answered. Over time, He brought people into my life who encouraged me to grow, to serve, to love better. Friends who pointed me back to Him. Think about your closest relationships. Are they helping you grow in kindness, or are they pulling you away from it? It's not about cutting people off. It's about being intentional with who you allow to have the deepest influence on your heart. So here are a few ways to guard your social circle and invest in the right friendships. Firstly, pray for wisdom. Ask God to guide you in choosing friends who align with your values. Secondly, be the kind of friend you want. Are you the kind of friend who builds others up? Kindness in friendships is a two-way street. Thirdly, create boundaries. It's okay to distance yourself from relationships that consistently bring negativity or lead you away from the person God is calling you to be. Boundaries are an act of kindness to yourself and to others. The fourth foundation for living a kind life is guarding your social concern. In other words, being intentional about how you show kindness to others, especially beyond your immediate circle of friends. Think about the first part of verse 4 again. Let not my heart be drawn to what is evil, to take part in wicked deeds. At first glance, this verse seems focused on avoiding temptation or wrongdoing. But look a little deeper and you'll see David's heart. He's praying for a life that doesn't turn inward, a life that resists selfishness. That's what social concern is all about. Letting your heart stay open to the needs of others and choosing to do good, even when it's inconvenient. I remember somebody once saying this to me: whenever you feel like you don't have time to help, that's the moment when kindness matters most. David's prayer in this verse is a call to reject the kind of life that prioritizes selfish indulgence over service. Kindness calls us outwards. It asks us to notice the people who might otherwise be invisible and to respond in ways that reflect God's love. When we guard our social concern, when we intentionally make room in our lives for helping others, we step into the kind of life God designed for us. In Matthew 25 verse 40, Jesus says, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Isn't that a beautiful reminder that every act of kindness matters in God's eyes? When we open our hearts to the needs of others, we discover something amazing. Kindness isn't a drain, it's a blessing. It draws us closer to God, closer to others, and even to our own sense of purpose. But while we're busy caring for others, how do we make sure we stay secure ourselves? Well, that's where the fifth and final foundation comes in. Let's talk about how we guard our security in God. No matter how much effort we put into prayer, speech, friendships, and acts of kindness, we need a strong foundation to stand on. Psalm 141 verses 8 to 9 reminds us exactly where to place our security. But my eyes are fixed on you, sovereign Lord. In you I take refuge. David's words are a powerful reminder that life is full of challenges, uncertainties, and even dangers. But instead of letting fear or doubt rule him, he chooses to fix his eyes on God. That's the key to guarding your security, relying on God's strength, not your own. And when we've experienced the kindness of God in our lives, we become kinder to other people. So how can we guard our security in God in practical ways? Well, here's some steps that have really helped me. Firstly, fix your eyes on him daily. Start or end your day by reading scripture or spending time in prayer. Psalm 46 verse 1 says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." Let that truth ground you. Secondly, release your burdens. Whatever's weighing on you, give it to God. It's a freeing act of surrender. Thirdly, trust his timing. Sometimes we don't feel secure because we're waiting for answers or solutions. Remember that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match our own. Fourth, stay rooted in community. Surround yourself with people who encourage your faith and remind you of God's promises when you feel shaken. Remember, kindness isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about letting God shape you day by day, decision by decision. You don't have to master all 5 foundations today, or even this week. Start where you are. Maybe it's committing to prayer every morning or choosing to hold back that one harsh comment. Maybe it's texting a friend to thank them for their kindness. Remember, God's grace meets us where we are and He helps us grow. Every small step matters, and every act of kindness brings us closer to the life He's called us to live.